Maiklis nuk kera Romero niega nuk nu hagaro you. Tawuk Huivanius. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Kara Romero. I'm an enrolled citizen down with the Chemehuevi Indian tribe in Mojave Desert, California. I have had the honor of being the first director of the Bioneers Indigeneity Program. I started in 2011. This is my 13th conference, thank you, and this is the 15th annual Indigenous Forum. This was started in 2007 as an informal caucus with our Indigenous delegation. It was really Clayton Thomas Mueller, it was Ariel Deranger, Tom Goldtooth, Melissa Nelson, that needed a place, a safe place for the Indigenous folks that were at the majority white conference to do a deep dive on the environmental and social justice issues that are unique to Indigenous peoples within the broader global dialogue of environmental and social justice. And the very next year, the founders, Kenny and Nina, seeded the program with $25,000 to be able to start the Indigenous Forum within the larger conference. And each year it's grown. We have a Native Youth Leadership Program that's grown from an original cohort of 4 to sometimes swelling to over 125 Native youth that come to the conference. We've gone from a couple of board members managing a side project to 3 full-time Native women staff members, 1 more on contract with the Bioneers organization, and our program is just rocking it. So thank you to all of you for being here. It's amazing to be here in Berkeley. That increases the accessibility to this conference, the diversity of the audience. It is amazing to be on the ancestral homelands of the Chochenyo speaking peoples here, and it just has a whole beautiful energy being here. And without further ado, we're at a little bit past 3, and I want to welcome you to the I'd like to welcome you to the Undam the Klamath panel and how tribes led the largest river restoration project in U.S. history. I'm joined here today from closest to me, Isaac Kenny, Sammy Gensaw, and Craig Tucker. I'll do a little brief bio, and I wanted to talk a little bit about this incredible history of tribes working together to advocate over destroyed riparian ecosystems and decimated salmon populations for many, many years. And in 2022, the US government finally agreed that the dams would come down. And this is something that, you know, from very far away, tribes across the US, including myself from down in the South, celebrated with you all from very far away because it is an American history of genocide and environmental racism and ecological apartheid that so many of the tribes in the United States face in the name of hydroelectric energy, right? So that resource extraction that happens in the backyards of people of color, that happened to so many of us and continues to happen, right? Whether it's oil on the coast of California, gold in the Black Hills, the hydroelectric energy of the Reformation era after the Great Depression. These were projects in the name of energy security of the United States, where so many of our territories were declared eminent domain, and the good life was over. It was a time of great sadness for Native peoples, and so many of us were flooded out of our ancestral homelands and watched our rivers be destroyed and our ecosystems that we grew up on. And we grew up with the stories, right, of our elders experiencing this sadness and this change. And so we celebrate with you. Our 3 panelists today, to my left is Isaac Kinney. He's Yurok and Chicano. He grew up all his life on the Trinity and Klamath River, except he went to UC Davis for a little while. He's back working with his tribe. He's got a lot to share with us today about his experience and his different projects that he's got going on. Next is Sammy Gensaw. He's also from Yurok, and he's described by Isaac as a young rock star from the tribe. He is the founder of the Ancestral Guard. He's Yurok. He's a Yurok language speaker, a singer, a writer, an artist. He's an environmental activist, a regalia maker, a mediator, and a youth leader and fisherman. So thank you for being here. And last we have Craig Tucker. He is self-described as an enviro bro. He is an ally, and he's going to talk about what it is to be a good ally to Indigenous peoples. He's got deep history working with the tribes along the river as first a scientist, and really learned a lot more about Indigenous grassroots movement, and it really changed his life. And so thank you all for being here today. And I'm just going to go ahead and get into it. I would love for the three of you to take a little bit of time to talk about your background and whatever seems relevant for you as we talk about this project, what you have had going on in your life and what's going on now.
Yeah. I agree now Isaac Kinney, Wage Poos, Metwa Metrakasi, Wage Poosok. Hello, my name is Isaac Kinney from the village of Witchpeck at the confluence of the Klamath and Trinity Rivers. Grew up in Salyer, Witchpeck, till went to university down by Sacramento. And yeah, Native American Studies, came home working in transportation. So infrastructure has been a big passion. Projects at different scales, big passion. So I've always been keeping, again, a passion for taking down the dams. Growing up with these and seeing rock stars leading this fight at a young age is very empowering. And so that's kind of, again, understanding that our Native, Indigenous, women-led campaigns are the biggest ones that are continuing to make that movement and grow exponentially. And so I want to kind of just start with the rematriation of these large-scale projects has to be a key to our survival. So I could keep on going, but thank you.
Before I start, I'd like to give a shout out to the young adults from up where I'm from, over here with Donald and Two Feathers and these guys over here, because that's why we're here. I started out just like that, going to conferences. I started at 12 years old, being trained amongst our tribal leaders and elders and family members to fight for something that I believed in. And I had to do that at a young age because I was a fisherman. I am a fisherman, and one day I hope to just be a fisherman. But until then, I understand that we have to fight for what we love and we have to fight for what we believe in. And I do truly hope that day comes, but I don't see it coming anytime soon. So until then, I've committed my life and dedicated my days to making sure that this next generation can do the same, to protect what they love. Yeah, so.
Well, my name's Craig Tucker, and I would just say it's been distinct honor and privilege to be a part of this fight to remove dams and restore fisheries in the Klamath River. And I do come at it from being self-described as an enviro bro. I left a career in academic science to pursue a career in environmental activism. Didn't really know how to do that. So I spent a year with a program called Green Corps. There's any Green Corps folks here. But it was a training program, really how to do the fundamental basics of how you do grassroots organizing, put together political campaigns. And I went to work with a statewide river group called Friends of the River. And that's when the fish kill happened back in 2002, when somewhere around 70,000 adult salmon died on the Yurok Reservation before they could spawn. And it really kind of put Klamath in an international spotlight. And so I started going to meetings about Klamath, and it wasn't long that I figured out or started to figure out this intersection between environmental issues and social justice issues, issues related to tribal sovereignty, and issues of democracy. And I do give Bioneers a lot of credit for helping me and folks like me start putting that together, because I think that's something that when Bioneers started talking about these things, the intersection of these things 30 years ago, not a lot of people were talking about it. And so I am very appreciative of that. And I'm very appreciative of Leif Hillman and Awak Troy Fletcher, leaders from Karuk and Yurok tribes, who invited me to come work on this issue, knowing my flaws and what I didn't know about working in Indian country. So I'm very appreciative of folks like Isaac and Sammy and a lot of other folks who put up with my whiteness, I guess, and taught me how to behave in Indian country and allowed me to work on this project with them, and I'm forever grateful for it.
So I'd like to just start with an overview, a history of maybe start from what the ecosystem disruption looked like, right? That time of great sadness, and then what that momentum looked like over the 20 or 30 years to some of those keystone decisions. Do you want to go ahead and give me an overview, Sammy? Is that?
Yeah, I'll lead in, and then so for me, I can speak on what I know, and that is, I know that in the 70s, my father used to talk about he can look over the edge of his boat and he can see down to the bottom of the river and he can actually see salmon, and they could fish. They didn't have to worry about not being able to provide for their families when they went down to the river to harvest. And I know that my grandma Elma, she was the same way. When she would go down to the river, they didn't have a lot of concerns like we did growing up. So, but there was always this teaching that they passed on that said, the river wasn't always like this. They understood what was happening very early on. But what it really affected me was in the 2002 fish kill. And that was the first day, I seen my grandmother just full out bawl her eyes out. My great-grandmother, Lena Nicholson, she spent her whole life in California fighting for the health care of indigenous people. And she really put me on to standing up for my rights and our people. But when I seen her cry like that, and we all jumped in the rigs and we drove down to the river, and I heard everybody crying, and I just smelled, genocide. It's something that sticks with you throughout your life. And it was at that time that my grandmother and my parents told me that, it's not the end, but it's the beginning. We have to start doing something right now, and it starts with us. And so, having said that, these dams have been affecting our river for nearly 100 years. And to see, the population of salmon in my lifetime be affected by these dams, it always felt like there was a monster at the headwaters growing up. It's always described as like a story of like this force that can't be reckoned with, that's demolishing everything in its path. And I grew up with that narrative, but as I grew older and I started working with Undam the Klamath Coalition, actually Craig was the first guy with a full beard that I knew could stand up for the river like that. I didn't know it was possible. First guy I ever heard a southern accent. I thought he was messing with me at first. But there's a group called the Undam the Klamath Coalition, and they had a meeting at my high school, and they didn't think that everybody was going to show up because the email didn't go out, and so they had all this Subway there, and then somebody had to eat it, so they called the kids in, and I was like, man, this is our school. I'm going to go and I'm going to get some of this too. So I was sitting there, all of a sudden this whole table started filling up full of activists. And I knew I heard their names before, and I've seen these people. And then they started talking. I said, well, I can help organize it too if you guys need some help. And then Craig looked over. He's like, wait, who are you? And I didn't know what to say. I was like, well, I'm Sammy Jinsaw, future leader of the Yurok tribe. And he's like, welcome aboard. From then, I just started organizing and traveling around with these guys, and I was living, I'd leave my house as a 15-year-old. I would leave my front door and I didn't know when I'd walk back through it. But I took those steps knowing that if I did this, then one day, somebody wouldn't have to make the same decision. And that's what my grandma always told me. We do this, we make these sacrifices, you sit here, you listen to these stories, you continue these stories, because one day they're going to need people like us. And she'd always tell me that. I said, Grandma, I want to go play football. I want to go do sport. No, you got to come here. You got to go bail out the canoes. You got to do all this, because one day they're going to need people like us. And she wasn't lying. That time is now.
Everybody's mic'd up, Sammy. So you're stuck with the mic. So I just want to make sure everybody realizes what we've done on the Klamath and what tribal folks on the Klamath have done. And so some of it's like, where is the Klamath? The Klamath starts up around Crater Lake in Oregon, in the Cascades. It flows through High Mountain Desert in Oregon, flows into California where it starts picking up steam, becomes a river with rapids and waterfalls, and empties into the Pacific Ocean about 30 miles this side of the Oregon state line. And it's an enormous river basin. It's about the size of the state of Maryland. And if you look at the river basin, it's shaped like an hourglass, and at the waist of the hourglass is where these dams are. So they put in these dams from between 1918 and 1962 and really cut the river in half. And so salmon used to go all the way up there in Oregon. They used to climb 5,000 feet of elevation and spawn up there. And they've been denied that access to that habitat for almost 100 years. And the dams were owned by a multinational energy company. Well, they were owned locally by a company up in Portland, Oregon named Pacificor. And Pacificor is owned by a Scottish multinational energy company. And so when we decided to go for dam removal, we decided we weren't going to mess around with the federal government and federal agencies and the George Bush administration. We decided to make it a corporate responsibility campaign out of the gate. And I think that's why I think this is why AWOC Troy Fletcher and Leif Hillman asked me to come help, because I thought I was brilliant to have that idea, only to find out they're like, finally, these white guys are figuring out how this stuff works. And so 30 of us in 2004 went to Scotland and crashed the shareholders meeting of Scottish Power. And we did that 3 times. And we thought we were going to win in Scotland, but then they sold Pacificor to Berkshire Energy, which is Warren Buffett's company. And I thought I was going to weep the day that happened. And I can remember Leif Hillman saying, okay, well, where does he live? And so the next year we loaded up and went to Omaha, Nebraska, and crashed the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meeting, which I call an orgy of capitalism. It was really remarkable, but it was years of very confrontational protest, activism, coupled with great legal teams from the tribes. And the environmental groups were really uncomfortable with that beginning, but then they kind of got into the swing of it and really stopped trying to position themselves as the leader of this effort and figured out that tribal nations were leading this effort. So it was a long haul to get there, and I just want to say that 4 weeks ago we did the press event announcing that ground has broken, and the dams are coming out, and they'll all be out of the river by the end of next year.
Isaac, I wanted to, we're young and there's a lot of people that came before us. And do you want to speak to some of the people that aren't in the room that we can remember and recognize today, and your family and your personal experience of?
Yeah, no, and I think too, when Heikik Ret Roy is our word for the Klamath River. And again, the river, the water from the mountains is a kind of a loose translation, but understanding that the Trinity River is the biggest tributary to the Klamath as well, and that the Hoopa people have put a lot of, support in taking the dams out. There's always, again, challenges to work through, but understanding that there is a lot of support intertribally intergenerationally, intertribally. And so
And the tribes are Yurok.
you got Karuks, Yuroks, Hoopas, the Klamath tribes up in Oregon as well. Again, the Scott and Shasta rivers have big, again, tributaries into the overall watershed here. And so, again, for me, people that have plugged me in continually, again, my elders, the James family, that's been a big part of who I, culturally has been a lot of what I've seen the rivers. So we have a boat dance, we have, world renewal ceremonies that, using this part of, our culture to be a part of our lifestyle is a big part. And so people that brought me in, again, a lot of Leaf has even, he showed me around a lot. But being in Witchpeck, we get a lot of people from everywhere. They come through. And so I think one that I do want to elevate that he's not here anymore, but has brought me in a lot of different ways and still continue. His family does. Grant Gilkinson is a Karuk, he was a Karuk person that had a real knack of, not judging. There's a lot of, when you talk about different tribes, there's, ways that we got to kind of be better about that lateral. But he was able to, see through a lot of the issues and the challenges and say, we still have work to do. It don't matter about that BS. We have to be organized and disciplined and keep moving. And so, he's a big part. Analia Hillman is a big part of my understanding too in bringing these dams down. These understandings that we don't have these bigger micropollutants in our water. We don't have these bigger fire on the land projects without some of these frameworks and models and demonstrations of how to do it. And so, long story short, sorry. Yeah.
Craig, can you talk a little bit about moving from scientist to a grassroots organizer in Indian country and some of the people that helped you do that and gave you some of your big realizations about how to be a better person?
Yeah, I think I was, from a young age, was really interested in biology, and so I grew up to be a biologist. I actually have pursued a PhD in biochemistry, and I think along that academic journey, I had this in my mind, like if we just show them the data, right? I was aware that we were killing the planet and loss of diversity was a huge problem. But I'm like, must be a lack of data. But I think by the time I got through, I know it's laughable to say that now, but I was young. It took a while to figure that out. But by the time I finished graduate school, it was very clear to me that data has nothing to do with this. And so I think I need to do something different. But I didn't know what to do. And so I did what all good young liberals do. I started reading Noam Chomsky and trying to leftist literature and. But I read You Can't Be Neutral on a Moving Train and quit my job the day after I read that book and decided I wanted to be a part of the environmental movement. And this is about the time the Battle of Seattle was going down. And I really got interested in WTO and things like that. And so then I joined Green Corps because I wanted to learn the skill set. And so by the time I finished with the Green Corps, I'd already started working on water issues in California. I want to be part of a bigger movement, and I met Ronnie Pierce. And I don't know if you guys remember Ronnie. She was a Native woman that worked for the tribes on the Klamath and represented them in the dam relicensing. And she was about 5 feet tall and probably smoked 2 packs a day. And but she was the only person. We'd go to these rooms full of bureaucrats and environmental activists and government agency folks and Pacificor. And she would just call bullshit in the middle of the meeting and say, if you guys are going to do this, I'm going to smoke. And she would leave. And I was like, I can't believe she just did that. I can't believe she gets away with that. But then I'd follow her out, and she started explaining to me what was going on. And she was the first person who had the guts to start talking. Because when we started talking about dam removal, we were talking about no one had ever attempted removing a large dam, much less 4 large dams at once. And so it was a really radical idea in 2001, 2002, 2003 to be talking about it. And she was fearless in talking about it. And so she was one of those people when I said, we should, instead of this stuff with the government, this is ridiculous, we need to get after this company. She's like, yes. And that's when she started credentialing me, I think, in tribal communities. She's the one that took me and introduced me to tribal leaders and tribal councils. And so she saw something in me, I think. And she, I think she made sure I had thick enough skin to do it. She worked on me pretty hard. But she and I never knew if Ronnie was an engineer or a biologist or a lawyer, because she could do all of that stuff. And so I think she gets a lot of credit for getting dam removal campaigns started on the Klamath and teaching me how you do this sort of work.
I can't remember who it was, but I think it was maybe you were saying that the best scientists on the river are the indigenous folks.
Well,
right?
I think one of the things I love about working, there's a lot of things I love about working for tribes, but the tribal science teams are phenomenal and started integrating traditional ecological knowledge into Western science long before anyone coined that phrase. And so, having, Leif Hillman tells the story when he started the Karuk fisheries program, the first person he hired was a fisherman, because he's like, well, I don't think you can have a fisheries program without any fishermen. So he hired a fisherman before he went out and started recruiting biologists. But I think that kind of tells you the perspective that tribes are brought to the table and had to kind of jam that traditional knowledge down people's throats at times. And slowly Western science, we'd say, is sort of catching up with some of the things that tribes have known all along.
Can you guys talk a little bit about what you're experiencing now? A lot of us from afar, we can read headlines about the moratorium on fishing this year. And, I wouldn't use the word historically, but recent history of these fights between fishers and farmers. And it's like rural America against, commercial fishing. Can you explain and describe a little bit of like what you see there now, what's going on?
First, I have to acknowledge the people who went through the fish wars to make sure that we can even have the rights to fight for dam removal. At one point in time, our grandparents were lined up across the river, and they're faced against people with flat jackets, machine guns. They're getting their boats sunk. People were going missing. People were getting beat up. They were getting kidnapped. There was a lot of things that were happening with the fish wars. And when that happened, we were at war with the United States government. They were coming for our people, and they were coming for our land and our water, and they didn't want us to exist. And so these are the people who stood up before our tribe was organized. Our tribe, as a Yurok tribe, politically organized in 1993. But before then, it was a coalition of people who came together to make sure that these rights were respected by the United States government. And that's one thing that I will always do. I will never bend from, is that we have sovereignty and we have the rights to defend our people. And that's one thing we have to continue to pass on. And one thing that is that we have to continue to fight for that sovereignty like our ancestors did before us. And if they have never done that, I wouldn't have been able to put in the predicament to fight for my rights. If Craig and Leif and Molly and all these people didn't create a space for me to go into as a young child, then I would have never had the opportunity to pass these on to future generations. So today, what we're facing is, as a fisherman, I've spent most of my life sitting inside of a boat right outside my home village. I've spent most of my life living within my own home village, drinking from the same creeks that my grandfathers and his grandfathers and their grandmothers have since the beginning of time. And I realize now that what a blessing that is today. But on the same hand, we're not fishing the same kind of river system. Today, I can go out there and I can set my net all day. I can wake up early in the morning for the sunrise, and I can fish my hardest. I can make sure my net's the cleanest. I can brutal the weather, go through perfect fishing conditions, and come home with nothing. And that's the reality we're facing. And today there's so many young people who have been taught to be providers. It's in our DNA. We're structured to take care of our people. We're structured to be providers and protectors. And then when you go out all day and you don't have anything to bring home to your family at the end of the day, no matter what you did, something within that tears you up on the inside, you know? And that's what our youth are facing. That's what our people are facing. And then on top of that, you're in these places where right now, even in my homeland, there's not one grocery store where we can go, and if we didn't catch anything, we can't even go to the store and bring back some food. You can't do it. All you got to do is you got to come home and just hope that they understand. And that doesn't feed your family. And that's the difference. There's people out there that like to eat salmon, and then there's people out there that need to eat salmon. And that's who I am.
Yeah, and I would like to also kind of just, bring it back around that, bring in with Yurok tribe, some of our first leadership is Susie Long, and then Sue Maston also had a big part in these dam removals. Again, this understanding of the fish wars, the James family, Paul James got arrested for fishing. Changed his whole life, couldn't even go back and work for his tribe because he's a convicted felon. So this understanding that we have these rights to still have a responsibility for is a big part that, even bringing up till now, Jamie Holt is someone that I go to a lot and is a big part of that traditional ecological knowledge and making sure that the biologists and people that are learning also have this other comprehensive understanding. And so, those are two leaders that, again, continue to show these rights that we have they're strong. We have to have confidence, but they are fragile as well, unless we got to keep using them. And so that's a big part of it. I also want to show too that this is also, we have a lot of hope here. And there is a lot of work to be done, but there is a lot of light to be seen. And so I just want to keep on that too.
And that's the positives today is that our people, we're bred into resilience throughout the years. It's something that we've had to pass on through generations along with these values of world renewal. And for us, I've always been taught about these values of world renewal and what that means to our families. And one is you take care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually to the best of your abilities. So you have the capability to take care of your Natantmer. And Natantmer, it basically means the people you love who love you back. Because there's people in this world and there's organizations and there's places that you can show love to, but they you don't receive that love back. So you need to learn the difference in those relationships. So once you have the capabilities to take care of yourself, and then you can take care of your loved ones, and they take care of themselves, it should lead everybody to take care of the land that we all need to live a good life. And once we take care of the land, it guarantees that these opportunities exist for future generations. And that is, in a nutshell, the values of world renewal. And our tribe today, through everything that we've been put through all the devastation, through everything we've been through, we've rose up and provided those healthy opportunities for our people. Today, who would have thought we can take these machines that were designed to tear this earth apart and restore it? And our tribe is providing these jobs for our people. Who would have thought these same systems that were designed to hold us down would be the reasons they can't stop us? It's because there's a transition that's happening around us right now where the power of indigenous people can no longer go unrecognized. It has to be acknowledged. Yep.
It's very inspiring that this is one of the most historical moments, and it's Indigenous led, and it's not just powerful for your tribe, it's powerful from afar. It's inspiring. And anyways, I just honor all of you. Craig, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the science stuff, right? Like what does this restoration look like from the scientific and bulldozing and all of that kind of?
So dams do a lot of things awful to rivers. I mean, there's the real obvious. Salmon are trying to swim to the headwaters. They can't get past the dams. These dams don't have ladders on them, and if they did, they wouldn't work because Iron Gate's 173 feet tall, and there's no fish ladder on Earth that works that's that big. So the first thing they do is they prevent salmon from getting to the headwaters of the Klamath. But the other thing they do on the Klamath is they create these horrific water quality problems. So the Klamath is a really unique river system. The wetlands are at the top of the system, and the rapids are at the bottom. So I always talk about Klamath being this upside down river. And so the upper Klamath Basin drains this large high mountain volcanic desert. And so the soil up there is really naturally rich in nitrogen and phosphorus. And so historically, the upper basin was what folks called the Everglades of the West. It was this giant wetland complex. So this large area drained into a big wetland. These wetland complexes consumed all those nutrients, came downriver, had good water quality. But what we did on the Klamath is we decided to get rid of all those wetlands and make way for potatoes and alfalfa predominantly. So above the dams, further up, there's a 225,000 acre federal irrigation project. And it's centered around a natural lake called Upper Klamath Lake. But the removal of all those wetlands means the nutrients stay in the water. Those nutrients come downstream. Those nutrients get trapped behind the dams we're trying to remove, that we are removing. And when the sun comes out in the summer, there are massive blooms of algae. And it's not only just disgusting algae, it's a toxic algae called Microcystis aeruginosa. So this is a potent liver toxin. And we really didn't know until about 2003 or 2004 like what flavor of algae this was, and the Karuk Tribe's water quality team went up there and took samples and sent them to a lab, and my colleague Susan Fricke calls me, she's like, the lab just called, and they're like, I don't know where you got that water, but whatever you do not touch that water. And so, the reservoirs behind Iron Gate Dam was something like 10,000-fold beyond the World Health Organization guidelines for this particular algal toxin. So it was a huge problem. So dams create a lot of problems, not just for fish, but it was a health problem for people. And another thing I'll just say about dams is, because there's a lot of dam fights, and I really think the fate of Pacific salmon is going to be determined in the next 20 or 25 years, because that's where all the big dams in the Pacific Northwest are going to come up for relicensing. So non-federally owned dams that make electricity are licensed by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. They usually are licensed for 30 to 50 year period. And when those licenses expires, that's your moment. And so the tribes had figured out back in the 1990s that these dams, the license would expire in 2004. So they started getting ready for this fight back then. But other dam licenses are going to come up all over the Pacific Northwest. And what we do when those licenses expire will probably determine whether our kids and grandkids enjoy wild Pacific salmon, because this problem is persistent all over the Pacific Northwest.
Thank you. Yeah. And so the bulldozers are there. Are they just going to rip them out and then the water starts flowing, or what? So
when they built the dam,
steps?
so they're going to unbuild them, sort of. It's just complete reverse of building them. So they bored holes in the mountainside to divert the river through while they built the dams, and those tunnels are still there. They've just been capped. So they're going to uncap those tunnels, put the river through the tunnel, and then deconstruct the dams. And I keep getting calls from reporters like, well, when's the explosion? And it's like, I'm like, well, it's going to be a little more boring than that. And they're like, oh, well, call me when there's an explosion. But it is going to be dramatic. So they're going to lower the reservoirs. A company called RES, weirdly named company, but it's Restoration Environmental Solutions, They're going to do, so this is the biggest dam removal area ever, but we say it's the biggest salmon restoration project area ever because we're going to restore 38 miles of river back to free-flowing conditions. And so how do you do that? Well, they've been out there for 3 years collecting seeds on site. So there's about 100 native plants in the area. They've collected thousands of seeds. They took those seeds to a farm up in Washington and propagated them. Now they have 17 billion seeds. So they got, right? And so as soon as the reservoirs get drawn down, they're going to go in there and start reseeding and replanting. Because if you don't, you'll end up with star thistle and Himalayan blackberry. So it's the effort and the scale of the effort is pretty staggering. And I think we're kind of in real time demonstrating how restoration actually works and how we can put these watersheds back together. And the other thing I would say is at the same, right now, these guys are going to have an awful year of fishing this year. They do. I think I read this morning that they did finally declare there will be no salmon fishing in California this year. And this is bad water management during times of drought is leading to this. But we're putting it back together at the right time, and it's not just about salmon. UROC just reintroduced condor to Northern California, right? Wolves just showed up in Siskiyou County, right? So, I think you can kind of doom scroll on your phone and get really depressed. But I'm like, stop and read about the Klamath, because I think we're showing you can put places back together. And a handful of super dedicated people can make it happen.
So Isaac and Sammy, witnessing this in your lifetime is exciting. You're there with your community. What are you feeling from the youth and from the elders?
I definitely want to make more opportunities to galvanize and elevate their voices as well. But I definitely see that hunger for seeing something new. Systems are not working. Like Sammy said, in Klamath, there's not a supermarket. This understanding of our connection to the land, there's a big hunger for that. Making sure to have these real safe, appropriate ways. That's why I'm really happy to see my Nepa Ernie over here. Felicidades, happy birthday, man. And the two feathers, right? So understanding that culture has a place. Creative arts, creative practice has its place, and that bringing that story and giving a chance for young people to write their own stories. I think there's job creation in that, and so that's something that I get excited about, and so we'll see.
That's right,
There's
because
a
you're
lot.
doing some cultural tourism, right? Is that what you're?
Well, the tribe is doing cultural tourism.
The tribe is doing
And
cultural
so,
tourism.
I'm working on a little bit more of maker spaces on my own projects. But maybe Sammy, you might want to get into what you see too.
I'm a 5-year plan kind of guy, so I've prepared myself for these times. I've seen what was happening in the world. I've spent a lot of time, at our ceremonies and had a lot of time to fast and think about these places and these things that are happening in our world. And so this is going to be the largest workload that I've ever taken on, because now we have so many people who will not be able to fish and provide for their families. We have so many people who depend on that river, but these opportunities that have historically been there won't be there. So what I've done the last 5 years is dedicated almost every day of my life to creating systems, new systems within our community that can kind of harbor some of that grief and harbor some of that burden. We've put around 60 home gardens into people's houses, and we use hugelkultur, and as the kids say, we even brought in the hippies. So we have so they come in and they help us with a bunch of stuff to plant and organic plants, and teaching fishermen how to not only be fishermen but also respect the river as a provider of space to grow our food. And so we have started a garden, a place where people can come and learn how to fish, and they can learn how to pick fiddleheads, and they can learn how to harvest and take care of their families. We've got land. You know, people say land back, but I've lived it. We've actually got land back from people who owned it in New York. So funny. They're like, my brother got the land back. We called them up and they're like, I heard the Democrats tearing those dams out and they're gonna, flood everything out. That land's gonna be worthless. And I sat there for a second. I said, "You damn right. You don't want that land. You know what I mean? Like, brother, we gotta do something. Sell me your land." And so I see that we reverse the systems. That's what I'm saying. So with this plan of action, we bought another chunk of land from this lady. This lady was selling me her land. She didn't want to sell it to me once she met me face to face. But her grandmother actually owned the land, and she used to rock pretty tough with my grandpa back in the day on the res. So she said, "You know what? I'm going to sell you that land," because she knew that what we were going to do with it. So we actually bought a portable commercial kitchen, and we've started building on it. And so we got this corner piece of property that we're going to have a commercial kitchen there. We bought, everything you need to butcher up deer meat, elk meat, and all these other things that families are going to be heavily leaning on to support themselves. So they'll have a proper place to come and process. We're going to be building smokehouses. But at the same time, these are unprecedented times. And, it's kind of hard to get the support for it because, people haven't faced this before. And so much time and so much things, they invest in things that are filling up kids' time. And it's not necessarily teaching these kids how to live. They're just trying to fill up this space and hope that they don't do drugs in that time, or they're trying to you got these people that, have been they're hiring, I don't want to say hiring, people that haven't lived that life, and they're in these positions where, these kids, when I grew up rough and tough on the river. I've been in more fist fights than I can count. I've lived a life on this river that I wouldn't trade in for nothing, but it's been rough. But on doing that, I've gained a perspective that allows me to survive in these places, because I will never leave my ancestral territory. I will never leave this place, no matter how sick this river gets, no matter how sick I get. Because where I'm from, the average lifespan for a Native American male in my condition where I live is about 65 years old. I'm almost halfway there. So, having said that, I want to spend the rest of my life on this river. I want to spend the rest of my life teaching my family how to fish and hunt and gather. So hopefully some of these kids will come and bring me some deer meat in the future. That's my retirement plan. That's what I got going on. So I suggest you do the same.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just add? So I think this is why indigenous people win, right? And when I worked for environmental groups, I could organize a protest, I could organize a rally, but it's like, man, we need to take on Warren Buffett. We need a crew who wants to throw down. And you're not going to find that outside of Indian country, or it's very rare to find it. And I think the commitment that Karuks and Yurok and Hoopa has to the place, there's not a problem confronting Warren Buffett on his home turf. There's not a problem stopping traffic in the middle of Omaha. There's not a problem taking toxic algae and dumping it on the floor in the lobby at Pacific Horse Head. It's like these things, it's like you have to have people who are willing to throw down. And it's hard to find that. And I think a lot of middle-class white people are way too comfortable to throw down. And so when I talk to conservation groups, I'm like, you better figure out how to be an ally to an Indian tribe, because you've got folks there who are going to do anything to protect these resources. And you got people who have the moral authority to speak to these resources. And you have unique laws that apply to tribes that let you achieve things that non-Indian organizations simply cannot achieve. So I think if my kids out here in the audience, if he's going to have fish and clean water and breathable air, and my grandkids are going to have opportunities, it's going to be because we learned how to get behind tribes and let them lead on these issues.
Thank you. you know, we've spoken to a few of the things that result from, you know, destruction of ecosystem, but really our tribes emerge from these ecosystems, right? And we've really been in this mode of survival, not just for 500 years, but especially in the last 100 years, you know, when our ecosystems are destroyed. And we talk about, you know, futurism, right? And we watch our non-native counterparts, you know, look about climate crisis and, you know, these ideas of apocalypse. We've already been through it. You know, that's where kind of like that resilience comes from, is like, you know, our grandparents and great grandparents went through the destruction of our worlds, you know. And so we really are coming at this, you know, in kind of like this Mad Max post-apocalyptic, you know, way of not being scared to, you know, fight for what we knew in the very beginning, right? Is that you just cannot be in dominion over our landscapes. We cannot have colonial mindsets and not only elevate Indigenous leadership, but, you know, Indigenous science is that science of observation, of like sitting on your boat your whole life, right? Like, you know the river, we know the river. And, you know, we don't use words like invasive species. We know when something pops up that we've never seen before, just, you know, kind of based on observation. We talked about it yesterday, and I can't emphasize it enough, but all of that destruction, you know, resource extraction leads to things like, you know, Native people being in food deserts, you know, and we don't tell those stories in, you know, the public education system. So we get to this, you know, point in modern time, and people are like, you know, why do the Chemehuevis live like that? And it's like, well, what, you know, like, you're missing the whole middle part of the story of, you know, why we're in a food desert and why we're sitting up on a mesa with alkaline soil. You know, all of our agriculture is under Lake Havasu. You know, you took it all of our cottonwoods, all of our riparian wetlands, you know, all of our game, all of our floodplains, you know, so we're like, we got a casino and we're driving around on golf carts, right? And it seems quizzical, but it's also like this truth of, you know, only having like one store with resort prices on our reservations, you know, where we're paying, you know, exorbitant amounts of money for, you know, milk and produce, and, you know, the least expensive foods are those that are not healthy, right? And so then we're, you know, living below socioeconomic, you know, median income. And so it just kind of like has this snowball effect. But with these ideas of, you know, ecosystem restoration, it's all connected to our health, right? Land back is spirit back, you know, getting the rivers back and having youth be engaged in these restoration projects is self-esteem, right? And so that self-esteem is like why, you know, we're suffering from alcoholism and all of these like devastating statistics. So it's all wrapped up in, like you were saying, Craig, getting behind not only Indigenous leadership, but restoring these places to how they're supposed to be. The smarter we get, the more tougher the pushback gets. Are you guys only experiencing success, or, you know, what are the current resistance? Like, how have the tactics changed, you know, between the man?
Yeah. You know, I say, yeah, I think it's funny when you say like we've lived through apocalyptic times, because, you know, in a way we have. And I believe that right now, when I first started, we were just teaching kids how to fish. And I heard these kids talk about what they wanted to see in their community once they're talking on the river when we're floating down. And I seen this piece of cardboard floating around the bottom of my boat, and I had this pen we used to write our tribal ID on our buoys. And I just sat back and I listened to these kids talk. And they said, man, I wish, you know, if we could do this, if I had a truck or you know, if I could do this, we'd take fish over here, we'd deliver these fish, I want to give it to my auntie. I wish we had a store we can go to do this and get materials so we can have a cookout and we can raise funds. And I wrote that down. I let these kids talk. I didn't disrupt them. I let them talk. And so we wrote that down, turned that into programming, and then turned that programming into a nonprofit today in which we work. But we did that with the basis and the belief of what we call, restorative revolution. We say the industrial revolution is over. It done happened, and the effects of that the industrial revolution will continue to affect our people for generations. A lot of things that are affecting us today are direct consequences from those times. So right now, people don't have the option to not listen to indigenous people more than ever. Because if you want to live a healthy lifestyle, if you want your kids to eat, if you want to be in a good way, you have to start living a life that parallels indigenous values. And if we don't start doing this today, like Craig said, there not be an opportunity for our kids in the future. I haven't got kids yet, but growing up and hearing like Craig fight so hard, and they do this for his kids, and seeing them, and like he was just saying, like, how hard everybody fought for their families, that's what's gonna carry us through. So for me, it's more of just, providing healthy opportunities. So if you're a millennial in this crowd, right now, you need to start thinking about getting out of the way. And if you're an older generation of millennial, you should have already got out of the way. And you know what I mean? So in reality, that's what needs to happen, because these solutions are sitting in third grade classrooms right now. The solutions that you're so desperately seeking aren't going to be from anybody on a stage that you see here today. They're going to come from these first graders, these kindergartners. So if you want to talk about, restoration, if you want to talk about making change, and you're not putting books into the hands of children, you're doing something wrong. If you're not making sure that these kids have healthy opportunities, you're doing something wrong. If you're not focused on the 0 to 3 aspects and the executive brain function of these children, well, they're building their subconscious within the first 5 years of life, then you're doing something wrong. And I'll be the first one to tell you if nobody else has. Yeah.
So I'm going to move to, I wanted to let everybody know that Sammy is in 2 films. One of them you can find on YouTube is Guardians of the River.
Yes, so there's one is called Guardians of the River. That's on YouTube, and then there's also one on Netflix called Gather. I might see me. It was filmed a couple years ago. My hair was shorter, belly was smaller. But see that? You remember this? Look familiar? And then we also just wrapped up filming with a special lady from. She was in Harry Potter not too long ago. She was Ron Weasley's younger sister. Her name is Beth. So they just came through, and we filmed with them to do a story about kind of what our nonprofit's doing, and that'll be on HBO Max in January. So you'll be able to see that.
Did you get a wand?
Not yet. I'm trying.
So calls to action. Do you guys have nonprofits, youth programs, places to donate, things that people can do to help you in your community? And if you want to go even further, more of that good advice, Sammy, for what they need to be doing when they go home. Is there a way that people can support each of you and in your efforts?
Yeah, again, kind of from COVID, end up starting a nonprofit and a business as well, trying to help other nonprofits and startups. And so watershed perspective, so it's a watershed regenerative ventures. And so looking at trying to, again, come up with these different ways and identifying obsolete, unstable infrastructure. And so knowing that we have a lot of issues around population safety, these dams is a demonstration that can show there's light at the end of the tunnel with these really crazy kind of projects we have to work through. And then, I think I definitely want to give a shout out to Two Feathers, especially because they're here. That's another aspect that comes with it. Finding and raising these warriors is a big part of the work that still needs to happen. And so, there's definitely so many people. I've been always helpful and always thankful for Seventh Generation Fund. They've given me a lot of ways to be who I am today. And so keeping that going, that's a big part.
Yeah, like I said, this next 5 years is going to be critical for our people and our people on the lower reservation. So we started the Ancestral Guard, which is a program under Nature Rights Council. So Nature Rights Council is a nonprofit organization that we started up north to give other programs, other people who are working in our community that don't have a big base, give them an opportunity to have that 501 support and to be able to get these projects off the ground. Like one thing we do through Nature Rights Council is Black Cat Medical, which helps teaches people, first responders out in the rural areas on the upper Klamath River. And so another part of that program is the Nature Rights Council. Is the Ancestral Guard, which I'm the program director of. So if you guys ever want to reach out or work with us, come out for a boat ride and kind of see what we're doing out there. Maybe even we can help you in your community. We love to do cultural exchanges. We've done cultural exchanges, with communities from Brazil. We have people from Bolivia, Malaysia, all across the world, Canada and other tribal nations across the states, where we come together and we learn from each other and we build up these networks that are going to help each other out. And so if you'd like to do something like that, we're always open. Feel free to get a hold of me. You can Google Ancestral Guard. And then also, if it's not us, you look into your local community and you see the indigenous people around you, and don't just look out to the first brown guy you see and give him some money. Look around and see about the people who are actually doing work. Look at these people, because there's kind of organizations that show up after the money's there, and there's these organizations that's been there all along. So look at these people who are doing the grassroots. Look at these people who are making change. Support, land going back to indigenous families. Support putting food in the mouths of, kids that are healthy. Do make access to food sources like, grocery stores or something, whatever it is your heart desires that makes you feel good. Make sure that you're there and you're showing up and you're filling that space, because, even for me, it's been a long time since I've been out and about and seen a lot of people like this. And I feel it makes my heart feel really good to be here. And I feel like, we're all connected, and no matter what, every single person in this room on this earth has indigenous roots to somewhere. You got to figure that out, and you got to acknowledge that. Even if your indigenous roots lie with the colonizers, you got to own that. You got to understand that. You don't have to necessarily be super proud about it, but you got to acknowledge it at the least. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah.
I don't even know what to follow that. I will say it did my heart good to see Appalachia rising. That's kind of throwback to where I'm from, but this morning for folks that didn't see them. But I would just pitch Save California Salmon. Save California Salmon they've only been around a few years, indigenous-led group, work on protecting salmon all over the state of California. It's in the name. Do great work, do great grassroots organizing, and whenever there's these boring water board or Bureau of Reclamation meetings, Save California Salmon usually shows up with young people to influence the outcome of those meetings. Great website, you should check them out.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have time for one or two questions. I'm going to start with just one more first, and if our facilitators could help us with maybe one or two more questions, that would be great. Tell me about adopting rights of nature up at Yurok. You guys were able to adopt rights of nature for the river. Did that play into this, or was that?
Oh, yes. So I got the honor of being one of the youngest people to serve as a vice chairman of the Yurok Tribes Natural Resources Committee. I also should have plugged Save California Salmon because I'm on the board. So so that too. I second Craig on that. But during my time on there, we had the opportunity. They were really inspired by Maori communities that provided rights for their river, and we had this special opportunity where we had a Maori person come work for our tribe, and it was really awesome. She's a really, I forget her name, but she was just this really just amazing person. She came through and did a lot of cool things, and a lot of people were in support of that, and she really drove that home for our people. So right now, the Yurok tribe, I believe it passed through through our board, and the Yurok tribe passed it. So what that looks like, I'm not entirely sure yet. We don't know how far this will reach. We don't know how it'll affect our fight in the future. Well, I don't know enough to say on that. But what I do know is that how it looks and how it feels to be able to tell our children that, and to have them know and acknowledge this river, has rights to us as a real person, as a living being, is pretty awesome, and it's a step in the right direction. And if we can use that as a momentum, because just like we're using dam removal as a launching pad, dam removal is not the all solution on this river. It is a first step for this to protecting these waterways. So this is not only going to be for us. Our homies on the Columbia River, we're coming for those Snake River dams too. We're coming. So there's so many people working on that. And so that's what it is. Yep, just making sure that the acknowledgement is there is a big step.
So the news headlines did say that the Yurok adopted rights of nature into their tribal governance, and it's one thing that we're really watching from other tribes, because the more tribes that adopt rights of nature into their tribal governance, we're looking to uphold those rights first in tribal court, right? And really examining how that works with our tribal sovereignty, especially with federally recognized tribes that have, some of those are supposed to have some of those deeper legal rights to being able to protect and uphold their own laws. And I know that White Earth up north was working on protecting the Manumin, and it was stopped in tribal court. But as soon as those, bringing down the dams is a huge precedence. Rights of nature, if we can get our first major ruling first in tribal court, and have the language be strong enough to go all the way up, is something else that you guys are leading. And other tribes are watching, and we're very hopeful. We're doing a lot of that work within Bioneers, also like a lot of the backside research on how we can make those laws have enforceability, right? To get it out of tribal court and then all the way up. So
with the rights of nature, I really see that alignment with Aboriginal title, and so that alignment is very clear here in California with that lack of treaty relationship. And so understanding that the natural law is you have to just get out of the way or understand it to understand where your role is. And that is a big part of, I think, the rights of nature coming in and aligning that Aboriginal title, where here, there's a lot of delegated rights out there, but tying federally, local, and state recognized tribes is a big thing that the rights of nature can do.
And these are tools, right? I mean, these, ways of working through, our laws don't work, to protect our ecosystems, right? It just, whether it be environmental protective law or, tribal law, they're not strong enough to go back to original instructions, which is the only way, right? But the more tools that we have, mechanisms, whether it be nonprofits, rights of nature, intertribal coalitions, these are tools, these are the best tools that we have, to move forward and to continue that, radical protection of our homelands, right? And sometimes we're not even on our homelands anymore, but you can re-indigenize the space that you are or where you've been put as, tribal people, and still continue to fight for the health of that. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, thank you.
Heston Chalabeske. Mentoria Chelsea, Wintu Vida. Hello, thank you for being here. My name is Chelsea. I'm Wintu. And my question's kind of going along on the thread of what we're talking about right now. I'm Wintu. I'm your neighbor to the east. And as we talk about sharing stories, sharing lessons, looking to how we can build the power for other tribes, I would like to ask you if you could speak from the heart and share any other lessons as we look to neighbors, Shasta Dam, Whiskey Town, and others.
Never ask permission. Just do it. You know, I mean, that's the one thing. Never ask permission, because your rights are larger than the reach of the government. Your rights are larger than the reach of the federal government, of, you know, anybody that's trying to restrain you. Never ask permission, you know, and never say please. That's it right there, because even our neighbors to the north, there's a story that has burned into my mind, and it's an old fishing trail. And these old women and their families would take that trail, and this was up in Talo country, and these people bought the property of what this trail passed, and they took it for, you know, the previous owners had no problem with it, but then one of the people asked permission to the landowners. Oh, hey, we're going to be going over here. Is it all right if we do this? And they said, sure. But then one of their kids said, no, you guys can't. We don't want you on the property. And when it went to court, and it was, you know, when it went through the process, they said, you guys asked permission, and that's how you got permission, and then they took it away from you. And so that, and then there was a fight ever since. So that's one thing I tell kids all the time. If your grandfather hunted there, if your grandparents hunted there, fished there, you hunt there, you fish there. And also, if you go to, if they try to take your rights away from you, fight it. Me personally, I've almost faced federal charges with my little brothers. All the head males in our family all got federal charges. They kicked open my friend's grandma's door, tried to take the buck steaks out their frying pan. And, you know, I mean, she wasn't having it. And it was real. It was like, they're like, you know, they tried to do so much, and then they told us they're going to send me to prison for 4 years. But I'm a 5-year kind of guy. You know, I had my plan set in motion. I said, do it. You know what I mean? And then, so they tried to send me to prison for 4 years. They tried to take my gun rights. And, you know, if I did that, I would never be able to work with kids or youth again. But I put all that on the line because I will never ask permission.
I think from my perspective is, again, remembering that our rights are inherent and inalienable. And so that's something I learned from Morningstar and the International Treaty Council. And so that's a definitely stay on that you don't got to ask in your own backyard.
Yeah. Oh, I got to clarify, all those charges were dropped too before they went to court. Yeah, so they dropped everything as soon as it came time. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. We're out of time. I just wanted to say it one more time. Watershed Regenerative Ventures. We have the Ancestral Guard, and we have Save California Salmon as some ways that you can get involved, follow up, support these amazing tribal efforts to lead the largest river restoration in U.S. history. I'm so proud of all of you. I'm proud to know you. Thank you so much.